Chad, if you're just getting here, I got some food in my mouth. I can't find my mouse. And we just held the Idris for 3 hours. So now we're going to watch SCL. I think there's 2 devs. There's a Q&A, and then there's another section where they talk to Forrest Steffen after. So I think it's only going to be about half an hour of a Q&A. So we're going to watch that, react to it, and we'll see. So here we go. Live Q&A distribution centers from CIG.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Star Citizen Live, our weekly behind-the-scenes discussion with developers about the making of Star Citizen and Squadron 42. I'm your host, Posh Jared Huckabee.
Who?
Just learned that word, Posh. I comb my
This guy's been in England for 2 years. He just learned the word posh.
hair, so I'm Posh. On the show this week, we have 2 members from our Steam development team talking about
Dude, I think they finally have Jared's volume correct. Let's see.
distribution centers, the big, giant microcosms of all FPS-related gameplay in the persistent universe that are coming online in Alpha 3.23. I like that word, microcosm. I forgot that I fed it to you during the ISC interview, and then I used it in my hosting, and then it's like in there twice, and we doubled down on microcosm. Then like one of the comments was like, "What the is microcosm?" And I'm like, "Look it up." So yeah, let's get to our guests. We've got John and James. John and James, how you doing?
Hello.
Hey. So, you know, every show is somebody's first show.
Big question needs to be answered in this episode. Everybody's freaking about PvP at these locations. I wonder how they're going to respond to that. The community was up in arms about it.
So we're going to take a few minutes and introduce yourselves, tell everybody who you are and what you do. James, you're in seat number 1, so we'll start with you.
One.
James, who are you? What do you do for Star Citizen?
I am James Kay. I am the lead content designer at CIG. We work mostly...
This guy's the lead content designer at CIG. Have you been taking a nap for the last 10 years? How's the nap been?
Well, we work entirely on the PU, mostly around missions, but also there's some location setup stuff. So we'll do like all the harvestables, the minables, and all the stuff behind the scenes to, I guess, make stuff work generally.
You said the lead content designer. Are you the only one?
Yeah, we've got other designers. We've got other lead designers. But I'm the lead content
You're the
designer.
only lead content designer.
Yeah.
I think curious, I looked at it. I think there's only 3 people in the company that have the word content in their title.
There's 3 people. 3 that have the name content in their title.
Yeah, I'm one of them too.
Are you?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Did you know that? Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Cool.
Cool.
The other one's Sean Tracy, so can't be perfect.
And the other one's Sean Tracy, Theaters of War.
Why am I giving Sean Tracy trash? Oh, because Forrest is here. John, tell everybody who you are and what you do for Star Citizen.
So hello again, my name's John Griffiths. I'm lead environment artist for EU Sandbox 2, and I've been, I suppose, guiding the ship that is distribution centers into existence. And
They're going to sell. He just said distribution centers are a ship. They're going to sell them.
that's basically been
That's
what
it.
I've been doing. Yeah.
Reddit, you heard it here first. Distribution centers are a ship. So we'll get stats on that immediately.
It's one on the ground that's huge, that doesn't move.
They're
But
going to sell
lots
them.
going on.
You've been working on
How did I
distribution centers.
pre-watch? I was in
Probably
game.
as close to the beginning as possible. Am I right? Everybody, there's this thing in development called the
I predict everything they say. When you've watched Jared for 10 years, you know what he's going to say. There's this thing that we talk about. It's about realism before fun. We try to, go to the point of realism and then bring it back to fun.
product owner. It's the person that's just kind of like if somebody else isn't around, ask this person, and if a decision has to be made real quickly, go with what this person says until we can all think about it. Are you the product owner for distribution?
I am the product owner for DCs. Yeah.
We've never talked about
so we can blame him when they fail
role on the show before. What did I get it right? Is there something I left out about what a product owner does?
Yeah, it's
all right, this isn't super important. I'm gonna
is
grab
there
a drink
someone I can speak to about DCs, and they're not on my direct team? The message gets passed on, my name gets passed to them, and then they come into my inbox or on Teams or what have you, and then I have to try and answer whatever question they have. And then at that point, if I can't answer it, I can at least recommend people to go to. But I know the location names, I know what's at each location. I
say hi to the baby.
I'm the know-it-all to some degree for DCs, which is quite good because I'm quite.
Some of you are new here. Lola has cancer.
I suppose conversation when stuff needs
trying to
figuring
spend
out
all the
quickly,
time I can
know
with her.
where the problem is, but it also means that I have a lot of information in my brain about this thing. And then once it goes out, I can forget all of that.
I was going to say, keep digging, John. It's just, it's the minute it goes out, patch goes out, it's like, okay, on to the next thing. And
well, I should update the Confluence and then.
gosh, I don't think I've seen an updated Confluence since 2014, but. All right, so today's show is a Q&A show. That's where we basically put a thread up on Spectrum, which is our bespoke communications platform available at robertspaceindustries.com. We let you submit your questions and then vote up on which ones you wanted to see answer the most. I let John and James collect the questions that they felt they were most capable of answering. As always, some questions just don't have answers at certain points in development. That's a problem for future.
At certain points in development, you're about to release these.
Whatever, but we did collect the questions that we felt we could answer today, and so we'll jump into those. So right off the bat, here's a pretty. I like the contentious attitude in this. I'm going to try to read this the way I think this was written. Are these going to be just another copy paste like we have seen with bunkers, or can we expect to see actual variety in the building designs?
Yes, I'll take that one. So.
He's staring at the sky. If you don't have an immediate yes, this means no.
Yes and no. So the main form, the main structure, that is going to look the same, but there are feathering assets around each DC to make them all unique, I suppose. Some are going to have quite a large footprint. I mean, it's a big thing on the ground anyway, but there's going to be a bit more of a spread on some of them, and some of them.
I think that's okay for now, guys. Right? The exterior being the same. So they're just large bunkers. So they're going to get boring. So CIG really hasn't learned their lesson here too much, but as long as they don't put too many of these in and they give themselves opportunities to make new ones in the future, right? Maybe really high-tech ones, maybe really industrial ones, maybe rundown ones, and so on and so on and so forth. To be frank, real life, warehouses don't look that unique. Fair enough, right? They're pretty much, low-angled pitch roof, doors that ships can go in and out. That is a very, very, very fair point, right? I keep looking at these as if they're factories, but they're kind of warehouses, but they could be factories, right? They could be. Do they just have to be warehouses?
They're going to be smaller. But yes, visually, they will be different from the exterior so that you do feel like
been working on them for 2
going
years.
To a different place each time. Also, we have
But I think what he means by visually is dressing. Like, this is the Hurston one. This is the Kovalex one, whatever, right? So we'll see.
Actions that
I think they're going to be skinned.
Each one, and that will be their branding will be on the building. The name of the place will be different. You'll go into the lobby and the brand that corporate facing area is going to be branded to that faction. So that'll be
thank
quite
you.
novel, which would be nice. But they are not just a copy and paste of the same. Well, even though I just said that, they do feel different, I would say, when you're flying to them, and also they are, some of them are where they are on the on planets. They're next to, interesting features. So hopefully you'll get a recognition of, oh, this is the place on.
You know what this tells me, and I will not speak for all players because that's ridiculous. Some players, and I think a good amount of players, if you're upset by this answer, and I feel like a decent amount of you are, what this is telling you is that they took 2 years of development time to make something that is copy-paste, that is overly large, and that makes it too complicated to make interesting, unique, and special. And if you're upset about that, I think your upsetness is justified. Okay? But at the same time, if they took 2 years out to make a few unique, really, really cool areas, that's cool as well, right? So, like, we got to take good with the bad. But if we look at the Montreal team, who's made a bunch of settlements that are extremely unique from each other, what is the argument? What is the complaint there? The only complaint there is I have nothing to do there, right? And they did it in way less time. So what does the player really want? And does CIG actually pay attention to what the player really wants? Or does somebody show the possibility of doing something really cool and then CR and team sign off on it and is like, yeah, do the really cool thing. It'll be cool, right? Instead of what players really, really, well, maybe not what they want, but what they need. And I feel like players need variety, yes, but also something to do at these locations. It sounds to me like these locations are going to have a lot to do, but maybe not have a lot of variety. Is that a bad thing? Maybe not.
Stanton 1 because it's next to this lovely sea and the sun never goes down. Oh, I know the one you're talking about, I'll meet you there, type of thing, which will be, something that we actually thought about rather than just going one here, one here, one here.
You say Stanton 1, you mean Hurston?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry.
The sun never goes down.
Here's a little
On a
actual
Hurston one?
behind-the-scenes truth stuff. None of the developers here, there's 1100, 1200, actually know the names of the planets. They all refer to them as Stanton 1, Stanton 1B, Stanton 2, Stanton 3, and it's like I have spent a decade at this place, like trying to suss this out. You mean this planet, right? And I'm like, it's because there's development.
I would say that the file path is Stanton plus a number. That's why I know it. But on Hurston and Microtech, they'll be released.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's talk about that. One of the questions, and I think it's in here, but we'll do it now. People have asked where these are going.
How's the volume, guys?
In
Good?
323. I think there's approximately 13-ish.
Okay. If you're able to fit 13, I think what they do need to do is eventually give some more unique variety to them. That is a lot. That's awesome. But I think eventually the goal should be to give a little bit more exterior variety and all that stuff. No. I think 13 in the Stanton system.
Where are they going? Is it just planets? Is it planets and moons?
So in this initial release, it will just be planets.
In this initial release, it'll just be planets. So there's going to be 7 on one and 6 on the other, it sounds like.
We've considered having them on moons, but due to time constraints, we won't be releasing initially on moons. This is just because we need, I believe that the wings should be different when you're in a, like an airless atmosphere.
Right.
The way you're interacting with cargo and moving things around in 0G is going to be different to when you're in gravity. So because we don't have those things yet, we won't be releasing them yet. But so for the moment, for this release, planets only.
Okay, well, he doesn't mean 0G, but there are lower G planets. So yeah, cool. I like his thought process here.
Right, and when you say planets, I assume that we can take out Crusader and we can take out ArcCorp. Crusader because there is no surface that we
Obviously,
can reach,
yep.
and ArcCorp because it's not made in the same way that Hurston and Microtech. So these are 13 split amongst Hurston and Microtech for 323.
It's impressive.
Okay.
Lots of locations to do missions. Lots of places to pirate.
Can we expect missions at distribution centers to tie into other professions like salvage, mining, medical, etc.?
Very good question.
Either in 323 or down the line in future patches.
I think down the line, yeah, certainly. I think distribution centers are obviously an enormous location, and they needn't just stand alone on the surface. There's no reason why potentially in the future they could have outlying structures that supply them and house the people that work there. So they could be very large, and with a large population, there's a lot of scope for lots of different gameplay. So like salvaging, like mining, expanding the delivery missions and the hauling missions, so they have more variety, more scope. There's tons of stuff to do as well. So it's just like,
I mean, it's called a distribution center. It can distribute anything, technically, right?
For me, the 323 release of distribution centers, it's like them in their most basic form. You know, this is where we start. Where we take it in the future, it's, yeah, there's so much.
Yeah, it's the first iteration. We were.
All right, guys, let me tell you how this is going to work, okay? I got you. So they're going to say a bunch of things right now, and they're going to say all the possible things that they can do with these. But here's what they're going to do, okay? Are you ready? Chat, let me know if you're ready. They're going to move on to the next thing, and they're not going to add anything to these for many, many years, okay?
We were talking about this before the show. Actually, we were talking about ideas like the distribution center was raided, and like they don't have the ore that they were supposed to have in stock in order to fulfill an order. So they might send you out to go mine this ore and bring it back, and we're just going to put it in the box and pretend like it was always there. Or maybe the distribution center can crank out some kind of detritus, not toxic waste, but some kind of refuse that then needs to be broken down. Like, hey, we could sure use help. Go in the back and and using salvage, break down all this.
Jared's being a backer right now. Do you hear Jared? Do you hear Jared being a fucking backer at the moment?
Excess garbage that we're producing through whatever. It's like there's definitely opportunities to come up with additional mission types and have it
for sure
tie into other.
He's like, yep. You ever talk to somebody but don't actually listen to what they're saying and just shake your head? That's what's happening right now.
Professions in the future.
He's like, I'm not doing any of that.
But for 323, it's basically the four kind of areas we talked about. The can you remember what they were?
Well, there's the hauling. That's the major one. They're distribution centers after all. So they tie into this new hauling loop. So you're taking massive quantities of cargo between different places. There's all the various what you might call the courier, like the box delivery missions. We're hoping to rework those somewhat.
Interesting. I'm very curious what he's going to say. I'm also curious what he thinks massive amounts of cargo is, considering that a whole sea cannot land at these, right?
So you're more of a FedEx driver than you are now. So there's scope for those. There's scope for delivery missions just internally. These distribution centers are so large, you can have delivery missions just inside them, like taking the cargo from, like, say, the storage room to the warehouse to the freight terminal to like a little base, like on the perimeters of.
I find that to be the coolest.
So there's tons and tons of scope for just moving stuff around, distributing stuff within the center.
Wild, keep those conversations to yourself.
I think there's
not appropriate.
There's a lot of focus right now on combat and stuff. Not just with distribution centers and the missions, but master modes and stuff like this. This happens naturally. But 323 is, I mean, there's no secret. This is the patch where we bring a whole bunch of stuff from Squadron over and bring it into the PU. And I don't think I'm telling any tales out of school to say that a lot of Squadron is very combat, focused. So a lot of these features are going to be very combat focused. Yeah. Big questions, after yesterday's Master Modes episode, we knew they were coming. So, how does this apply to non-combat ships? There is a healthy and a vibrant and I think very, I don't know, thirsty is not the right word since that has a different connotation, but very hungry type of Star Citizen out there who's looking for more non-combat oriented things to do in the PU. So I think not
because the problem is they're not only looking for non-combat, they don't want to interact with anybody but themselves or maybe a few of their friends.
A big hope that distribution centers, yes, we'll have some of that in 323, but going forward beyond 323 might evolve to involve more non-combat opportunities. And of course, there were big questions about how PvP and PvE will intermix and everything, and we'll get to that here in a bit.
Okay,
but I think there's a very healthy calling for that right now. And I say this as there's an enormous Idris event going on right now where you can battle and potentially capture the Idris. You should check that out. Go to the robertspaceindustrials.com website and read all about that if you haven't already, because that just started just before the show.
And while this show was going on, I was holding the bridge.
But yeah, amazing. It's obviously a lot of things are very combat focused right now, but I just want to, I think there's still a very healthy portion of people who are like, I would like to be able to play this game without ever firing a gun if possible.
I know,
and there's still lots of things we can do to support that and to expand that. Next question. I had never thought about this, but this is kind of obvious. Are abandoned or derelict distribution centers planned?
Planned, you would assume, yes.
Not at the moment, but I think going on the fact that there are rundown or abandoned versions of other locations, there's no reason why we couldn't have versions of the DCs which were in the same category. Yeah. And then you could then have DCs in like Pyro systems, like Pyro, for example, where they are kind of up for, maybe it's a bit of a capture the flag type episode on it, but with players, that would be quite cool to have. Who owns this distribution center? Does it change hands a lot? Are you then competing with kind of more established factions in the game? That would be pretty great. But right now we haven't got.
Yes, I think that is a really good observation, Parallax. Assume no DCs for Pyro at the moment.
Plans to do that, but I don't see why we shouldn't do that in the future.
I mean, you're right. We do make abandoned or derelict versions of everything else. It's
look
just
behind you, Jared. Right?
These brand new things look cool, and then you rough them up and you mess them up, and they just seem just that much more real. So, I would be very surprised if the call isn't made at some point.
Yeah, I think in the first release of anything, he says thinking about Pyro right now, you need an occupied version. And then when you have that, it's kind of like you've done all the setup already. You're just making new overlays, which
just fuck it up,
dress it in a certain way. So, the hardest part is the initial release, what we want. But then after that, it's still work to get these things done. But it's not, I suppose, as much work. Hopefully,
I don't know. It's I've seen that when they were making the derelict ships, it's a lot of work to break them up in a way that's not just crap, to be complete.
Yeah, I suppose with ships though, it's different because the ship is formed and they have to unform it. Whereas with us, our base rooms already exist. It's just new dressing on top of them.
You put some holes in there.
Yeah.
One of the things that got, when we were showing it at CitizenCon, one of the things that really came through were there are roads in some of these things. Roads have been this
kind of
like, when we talk about like the top 10 oldest questions that keep coming up over and over again over the year, roads are one of the big ones.
But if you're going to put the roads that are at these and count those as roads in the game, I think full well what every backer is asking. Is there a road from one location to another? That's what people want. Is there a reason for me to get on Highway 59, Highway 420, or whatever from one location to another on Daymar. You know, that's what people want. But yeah.
It's, we do have ground vehicles and they're all kind of off-roaders right now. This question says, in the future, is it planned to have distribution centers connected by a road network with smaller outposts or settlements, possibly several kilometers away from in their surroundings?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I don't think, well, I mean, who knows? It could be that there's a motorway from one to the next, but I think it depends on what the next location is. If that's a big town or what have you, then maybe you have roads within it, but then it kind of turns into dirt roads and then blends back into the DCs or something like that. It would be cool to have, this is where the DC is, and then 5 clicks this way there's a small town, 5 clicks this way it's like an ore depository or something. And
okay, so he clearly doesn't know anything about the way the game works. 1 second. Because 5 clicks is only 5 kilometers, and everyone's computer would fry if that was the case, right? So,
and then you've got a kind of a link there to, you could just spend your time just going between the 3 places, grabbing the cash, as it were. But yeah, I don't see why not in the future to have roads. It was interesting, when I did the presentation at CitizenCon, got a big woo for.
Yeah, he's speaking off the cuff, but he probably doesn't know the limitations of those things. He's been just making distribution centers for 2 years, I think. So I would not take anything he's saying as something that's going to happen.
So I'm looking forward to when people, start doing more races, and you actually then have to go through, maybe you have to go into the, oh wait, hold on, no, Sam said don't get vehicles in there. So maybe you can incorporate some DCs into those races, and then have fun at getting around those corners quickly is all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I think it's just something easy to say.
Next
That's a good
question here
point.
is a bit farther out for stuff, but we'll ask it and see what we.
Maybe instead of shitting on him, what I should say is don't take what he said literally, because it's not possible. Most likely.
Will the distribution centers ever be able to be operated and or held by organizations?
Oh, I mean, in the future, I think, there's definitely opportunity for that. You could have it so that the organization that operates it is just the initial owner of the location, and then really it could potentially just come down to manpower who can actually defend it.
King of the hill, baby.
Who owns it is just like, well, who's got the biggest gun?
My dream is exactly what he said right here. This is why I back Star Citizen, is the hope that this would be a possibility at some point in the future. I do not expect it in 3.23. I do not expect it anytime soon. I expect a full game design around like a King of the Hill type territory control. I just wish and hope that will be a thing. I don't think they've ever really shared that outside of these developer hopes and dreams thing. This is my copium. This is my hopium. Spam all the emotes you want. But I want that in the game, because if you have orgs, if you have guilds, whatever you want to call them, if you have those in the game, what do they do typically in other MMOs that you play? They hold territory. That territory has resources. Those orgs are able to make money through that, right? That's how MMOs work. You can't have an MMO and big companies without doing those things. They ruin games. Sure. We found the solo player in chat, I guess, but they can, right? They certainly can. I've definitely had big Zergs ruin games, right? But so I see what he's saying.
I think if I can, when they talk about operate, though, I mean like generate missions or
I see.
Besides just I want to hold this and nobody else can have it.
Yeah.
Is there room here for the idea that these might be operable? These might benefit an organization.
I think, I mean, one thing that the resource network might eventually lead into is the opportunity to generate stuff, you know, the distribution center. It could, for example, if it's a Greycat distribution center, it could potentially manufacture things. There's no reason why not. So if there's a player organization out there which essentially owns this facility, then they would have the, you know, de facto rights to manufacture that stuff. But then that kind of bleeds into the question of, well, where do they get the materials from? You can't manufacture things out of thin air. So you need a supply chain, and obviously you need these things that you do manufacture.
Now, what you have to guess is he having this conversation with himself, or have they had this conversation internally? I certainly hope it's number two. Because if that's what they want to do,
so
that's the game I backed.
Buyer. So it's this whole supply chain. You're just owning the distribution center is just like one piece of the puzzle, you know.
Well, it's we're doing a bit of theory crafting here right now.
Yep.
The nickel version of the answer is that there's no plan for it at this point. But you know, we do the same theory crafting. That's where all ideas start from. That's where all, you know, everything that gets put on the calendar, everything that gets put into development starts with people like us. And
I want to be clear, I don't expect any of this stuff anytime soon, but when Jared comes in and does fucking damage control, that's the shit that pisses me off. I'm not mad at Jared. He's doing the right thing in the right situation. But the thing that drives me nuts about this game studio is they haven't sat down and said, we're making distribution centers. This is the initial release. This is the intended end goal for what you're doing. Instead of, potentially we could do that. Maybe we could do this. That's not a bad idea. You need to make these things with the end in mind. They have made nothing with the end in mind. Look at every ship you fly. That doesn't make sense for the cargo refactor. They never had the end in mind. And now here we are with ships you paid hundreds of dollars for that don't fucking make sense and don't work.
Our room going,
Caterpillar
well, what
owners?
if we did this? And wouldn't it be cool if we did this? And then you know, somebody says, okay, somebody taps a producer and a potential product owner and says, all right, build me out a schedule and let's see how much time that.
What end? If you don't know what I mean by that, I'm sorry. You cannot be helped here.
Would take, how many resources it would take, and then you make the decision about whether that's going to go into active. I know that there are. There are some people who don't like the theory crafting or whatnot, and there are some people like we're in year 12 or something, you know, and theory crafting. It's because this thing goes. It's not like Star Citizen not working towards an end. There's not a point where it's like, okay, it's done. It's gone.
This is a bullshit excuse. What he's saying right now is bullshit to me. Right? What he's saying is bullshit to me. Obviously, the game doesn't end. I know exactly what he's saying. It's an MMO. It continues on. There's new storylines and expansions to these games, right? I totally understand. But you have to. Yeah, like this is removing all accountability to telling the backer the game that they're buying from you. Right? The intended design for distribution centers. What is your intention? That's what I'm talking about. The end of the game is not end game. That is exactly what I mean. End game is the intended design for this feature. Why are you making this? Is it because you think it looks cool or because you actually have intention behind it? Everything you're saying here tells me you have zero intention behind it outside of that thing looks fucking cool. And we want you to do the missions you already have at them at a new cool location. And for the Tier 0 release, that's fine. But you have to come in and say, what is our intended design for not only these, but the entire game overall? And that has been the biggest problem with this company from day one, is this thing is everything, so it's never something you don't want. It's always something you want. because they've never told you what it was. That's crazy.
Like, this thing just keeps going. It just keeps building and everything. So I really like that the theory crafting,
Yeah, this thing just keeps going and it just keeps building. I really like the theory crafting because it just continues to make us endless money because people think the game is something that it won't be. And that's so frustrating. That's so frustrating about being a backer that's like actually aware of the stupidity of this shit at this point.
doesn't stop. There's always that, well, maybe we can work towards this, and these things help us know what we're working towards. Because one of the other things I really like about working in this place, I'm just going to go off on a tangent here for a second, is I love that we're never afraid of the better idea. So there are plenty of times in our history where we thought we were doing this, like this was the plan, and then somebody in a random conversation is theory crafting, and what if we did this? And he goes, oh, well, that's way cooler than what we were doing. And it's
Jared explaining why we're in alpha and you're fucking 12.
like, well, let's do that instead and whatnot. I love that about this place. So, just as my 5 cents to anybody that's out there that's like, oh, they're just theory crafting, whatever. That's where all the best ideas are birthed. And you guys do it when I watch your YouTube videos and your streams, and we do it too. When I say there's no difference between you and us, I mean that.
Mike is still salty that they didn't get the Idris jumped out. Did I seem salty at any point during that thing? That was an incredible experience. I held an Idris for 3 hours.
Will the new UGFs replace or be in addition to existing bunkers? Well, we already know that. That's in addition. The existing.
Yeah, they will remain, and DCs will just be there as well.
It's one of the reasons we replaced the name. Like we were calling these new underground facilities for a while, and it's like, well, it just got confusing. People thought they would replace it. No, we named them because these are in addition.
Okay.
All right.
Talk
We
PvP.
talked about raids. Now, we talked about raids a little bit at CitizenCon, and we mentioned it at the end of the thing. When we talk about the future of distribution centers, what can you tell us about raids? What's known?
Great question. Well, what's known is we want them to be the end game, So you've done the story or what have you, you've explored your career as much as you want to, and then you can dip into these end game missions, as it were. And this is where you're going to find super rare loot or super high value items, and they're going to take place at DCs which are owned by big corporations or big brands or big factions. And we, like you said before, it was they were the new UGFs, underground facilities, and we still have the idea of, some of them, they do go underground, and that's where the raid takes place. So not only do you have to, fight your way through the airspace of the DC, then realize it's too hot, so land, get your ground vehicles out and approach on foot. You've got to get into the thing and then down into the raid. So they're going to be difficult. They're going to be, expect you to be, A-game people going in. You have your squad all kitted out. Everyone has a role to play.
I'm very quiet because he's actually explaining the intent, the whole thing that I just yelled about. This appears to be the intended design of these. Everything else is extra.
When the resource network comes online, you're going to have to kind of work strategically, I can't really say long words, to try and get in, which is going to be great.
Cool.
And then, what happens when you're in there and reinforcements are getting called in, but you've disabled everything, so it's actually even harder for you to get out. We want it to be tough, but we also want you to be rewarded for doing them as well. So that's...
Well, unfortunately, the reward isn't up to you. There's nothing in the game that is rewarding currently, and that's okay. For now, what we can expect is things that are worth money, but there's always the option to, in the future, as other game designs come online, we know about legendary armor and those kind of things. Those can be options at these locations. It just takes time, and we know about blueprints. We know about all this stuff. The opportunity is there. If we don't get it initially, that's okay, right? Think about Wake of Disaster even, right? Anything at these high intensity PvP type locations could be opportunities for really unique weapons, cargo, ship components, armors, blueprints, rewards, anything, right? The opportunity is there. They just have to develop the features that allow it. The moment that they can spawn random things in a random SCU container on a ship, that's step one, right? We're at step 0 where they've made the SCU containers that can be opened. The moment they can put specific stuff in it, that's step 1. And step 2 is making that stuff worth looting. That's step 2. And then step 3 is, what we do with that loot, I guess. So he's still talking about step 0. And that's okay.
It's kind of the general
it's exciting
overview that we want. We now have to go and do that.
I was gonna say, I want to be real clear. This is not a 2024 thing. Like anybody's, raids are not a 2024
shit, it's
thing.
not even
on
a
the
this
calendar for 2024.
Oh, that's interesting, Jared, because it was at CitizenCon 12 months or so. We got our first or so, chat. We got our first or so. It's official.
And don't even ask me beyond
there
that.
It is.
It's like, what's the point? But there's this.
Don't even ask you what's the point. I mean, you said it would be a thing at CitizenCon. That's the point.
As Star Citizen continues to develop, as we continue to harden the systems, and it becomes closer and closer to the game that we want it to be. We're going to continuously ask ourselves these MMO related questions. Like we don't want every trapping of every MMO that you ever see out there. We're not trying to be every single game that's ever once. But there are certain.
You literally are trying to be every game at once. That's the way you communicate. But
tenets, and there are certain tropes, if you will, of an MMO space that it's that interest us, that we like and stuff like this. And I can see us trying a few of them. I mean, organizations are just guilds by another name, and stuff like that. So it's not every MMO trope is bad. Some of them are expected. Some of them are frankly necessary to achieve the experience that we want. Raids will be an interesting experiment for us when that time comes.
They don't seem like raids from a traditional MMO standpoint, though. In a way, yes, but
because we
right
don't
away
have
they're not
health
instanced,
bar,
right?
The traditional, a lot of the traditional, class systems and stuff like that. So it'll be an interesting experiment when that time comes, and I'm looking forward to us trying it. Will it work? Will it not work?
Yeah.
Hey, maybe it's going to be a hover mode. Maybe it's going to be a master mode. It's like you don't know. It's I like
it's going to be a Siege of Orison.
So, but again, that's not a 2024 thing.
Maybe it's going to be a Theaters of War.
Additionally to that is I've been harping on about how big these things are on the ground for quite a while, and I just don't think anyone realizes how big they are. So I'm really looking forward to them going out and people going, "Oh, he was telling the truth this whole time." But if you think some of the missions that they're going to release with are going to be difficult, and you think, okay, so if this is how hard it is now, just think where we can get to when raids come online. And you think it's big on the ground now, just think of the networks you're going to have to go through to conquer these raids. So just bear that in the back of your mind when these do go out.
So let's move into the big question before we lose your time.
The big question. Here we go. PvP.
A lot of folks, and we knew this. We knew this when we were filming it, and this idea that PvE and PvP can meet in the same place. This obviously excites some people. Some people who are a bit more. What was the aggressive
Oh,
the aggressive outlaw, unlawful
Yeah.
player, kind of licks their chops at this idea, while the non-aggressive lawful player is like, "What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you dumb?" How do we go about that? How is this? How are these things going to merge? Not just in 323 and what we're doing for 323, but long term, because obviously. Because I already know where this is going. All the systems in place are not going to be in place for 323. So talk to me about 323, and then we'll go long term.
Okay. So I think the first thing to bear in mind about distribution centers is they're very varied, So some of them have, some of them will welcome players, some of them won't, but they're also varied in terms of level of security. So some of them will have security at the lower end. If you imagine an extremely well fortified bunker, that's like the lowest level of security for this distribution center. For the highest level of security, you're talking something alongside a rest stop, that kind of level. Lots and lots of turrets, probably a green zone, missile turrets as well. Yeah, they're going to be about as well fortified as we can make them for 323.
Right. So
Yeah, but those fortifications, unfortunately, are not very strong.
in 323, there's 13 spread across Microtech and Herson.
Yeah.
My understanding is that they come in kind of three flavors.
Yeah.
What are these three flavors?
Okay. So
And these aren't the visual thing. These are.
yeah.
This is what we're talking about: how to manage PvE and PvP.
yeah, this is the broad sort of gameplay kind of flavors. So we've got distribution centers which we're terming friendly. And on the opposite end of the scale, we've got distribution centers which are hostile. And then in between, you have a whole range which are just mixed. There's some combination of all the different factors put together in different levels.
Okay, so what makes a hostile one?
A hostile one, so it's separate to the security level, but a hostile one basically does not welcome players. If you enter, regardless of who you are, what you've done, what your reputation is with any kind of faction, they're going to shoot at you with whatever kind of weaponry they have around.
Why?
They will have turrets, they will have trespass zones, they will have security guards all over the place. Yeah, that's a hostile one.
It's like Chris when he sees me coming.
Okay.
What's the other? What's the friendly?
The friendly ones are much more welcoming. They will allow players in, kind of, as long as they have a neutral reputation with the owner, they will allow players in, and you can just go in, you can land, you can request land.
Please, Jared, please, for the love of God, ask the follow-up question: how would you get an unfavorable reputation with one of these places? Would killing players at missions there create that problem? Because I thought of that instantly, because I play the game. Jared claims to play the game. That would be one of these things that should come up instantly in your head that you would want to follow up. So talk to me about that reputation thing. How are these going to work at these locations? Are players going to have a problem? Basically, are players who do this frequently going to have problems coming back to these locations? Because that's what we need, right? We probably get saved for the ISC on reputation hostility. Yes, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't. You have to ask that question to answer the PvE versus PvP question, right? This isn't the guy who worked on reputation hostility, but he can touch on it very briefly, and they can deep dive it on ISC. But you cannot ask the question if you're not planning on fucking answering it.
And the access you can get in the hangar, you can walk around, no restrictions, no holds barred, just go wherever you please, no problem.
And my understanding is that in 323, these have an additional layer of security.
Yeah, so the friendly ones are going to be more towards the rest stop level of security.
So with green zones.
With green zones.
All right. So there will.
Interesting. Rest stops, you can shoot guns.
There will be, for 323, because we don't have the full law and order system
It's
that
a
we're working
stopgap,
towards.
yeah.
Some of these distribution centers will have a green zone.
Yep.
And that'll protect the players who, those lawful unaggressive players.
Yep.
It's like, oh well, I'm going to take a mission.
Outside of a space station, you can shoot guns. If you shoot too much, the station shoots at you. Inside the station, you can't shoot guns. I wonder if that's how they're going to play it.
And I don't think we'll outright tell them which is which. It's one of those things we like people to discover on their own. But you'll discover, okay, missions
Green
to this
zone means
distribution center and
armistice.
this distribution center are safe. It's I can go there. I can be a lawful, unaggressive player and not get harassed and stuff like that. And then there's the super aggressive where it's just I just want to be I want to be a pain in the ass for somebody and go. And then there'll be the collection of ones in between.
Exactly.
Okay. And that is, of course, until until the law and order
Xylo.
system continues
That's crazy.
to evolve. Players saw it in the Pyro playground and stuff.
Yes.
Some of these stations were supposed to have faction-oriented NPC guards that are supposed to stop griefing and stuff. That's all part of this law and order system. That's still being developed and still coming online. Additional evolutions to the law system. You're involved in the law. Generally speaking, you're involved in the criminal. What's it called? The law system, the criminal.
He's asking the question.
What word am I looking for?
I'll say an underworld.
The system that
order?
determines whether you're a criminal or not.
Justice?
What? No, we have a. Do we not have a name?
Reputation
I can't think of the name
hostility.
for it. I'm spacing right now. I'm sorry, guys. But this crime stat, the
Oh, okay.
the crime stat system,
Yeah,
and everything,
yeah.
even that's going to evolve. To the
Yeah,
point of having harder crime stats and crime stats that don't entirely wipe away and stuff.
Yeah,
Like that. So or you got rid of your crime stat, but there's a database that still remembers that you had one, and if you start getting too many of them, it's like, well, maybe you're just a permanent criminal.
Yeah.
Perks.
I think there's a drive to make it
You hear that, Burks?
make the security side quite more. How can I put it?
I love how he calls out Burks there when Burks, all he's done is bounties forever. Burks hasn't been criminal scum like ever.
Robust in their pursuit of justice and quite more persistent in it. And once you are caught, to make the punishment more severe and fitting. So it's not flat.
No.
It scales.
And I want to say what we're talking about
On-screen,
right now
true,
is
true,
not the theory crafting stuff that we talked about before. There is actually there's actually a very detailed law and order, kind of plan in place. Things that we're working towards. I can't tell you what patch, 1 patch, 2 patch, 3 patch, 4 patch, from now or whatever, whenever it's ready and online. But there is obviously we see what happened. We saw what happened in Pyro Playground. We can see what's happening in a lot of these places with griefing and stuff like this. And there are many things in place that we want to attempt. People will then naturally ask, well, why don't you just tell us about it? Because we need to try things. We need to try this, and if that doesn't work, then we're going to try this, and if that doesn't work, you're going to try this. You don't just have like one idea. You have an A idea, a B idea, a C idea, and you want to test these things. We just sit there and say we're.
I'm glad he's saying this because there's a lot of people that are tired of the way the game is being handled, and I think that's a good response to the overall community that's just tired of a lot of the lack of focus on why isn't the game protecting me at all, when it should a little bit at least, right? So
we're going to do this, and then we end up not going with A and going with C. Like, well, you told us you were going with A. Well, A didn't work. We had to test it first. So let us continue to do some refinement and work on it. And I promise, like all things, considering that it's literally my job to do so, we will inform and share the design and the intention of it when we feel that it's ready to be done so. But I just want to say that's
weird
not
because reputation hostility is
that's on the
planned
calendar
for 323, right?
So
So the first step is there.
Quick question.
As far as
about
sure.
that.
Oh, you can't have questions. That's not how the show works.
If, say I'm hauling to a friendly DC and I'm worried that I'm going to get attacked by pirates, in between doing my bit at the DC and going to the other location like a space station, can I theoretically message out to see if anyone can protect me in transit, and then maybe offer up some of the goods as payment. Because we don't have the system yet to do that, but there's an opportunity for players to potentially build some trust with one another.
Well, we have the service beacon system that allows some aspect of that and stuff like that. And of course, that's going to continue to iterate and stuff.
Guys, he's the art guy, okay? He's the art guy. He doesn't know about the game. He's been literally making these fucking giant bunkers for 2 years. Leave him alone.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Just putting it out there.
Is he asking if we could ask stuff in chat? Yes.
People.
We do tend to like player-oriented solutions whenever possible. All right, so yeah, that's
A very weird sort of answer, non-answer
about it,
on
guys.
the PvP
that's
thing.
all the time I had for you. Thank you for taking the time out of the end.
But I think Jared's response was probably the best. We want to protect you. We want you to have a good time. We are not ignoring you. Maybe not we want to protect you, but we are not ignoring you. You are not ignored. We need time. We need to figure these things out.
End of your week to this. James was literally in a call until about 10 minutes before the start of the show, and we had to rush him over here. He was literally presenting to other directors in the company about the current state of this and where it was at and what we still needed to do and stuff like that. In case you think my show is the priority, it's not. Making the game is. So I do appreciate you rushing over here to do the show.
Yeah.
We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to have an old friend. That made him sound like he's really... That made it sound like you're super old. He's not super old. I think he's actually younger than I am. He's just been with the project for about as long as any human being. I
have the craziest story about him, too.
He's here visiting. We're going to have him on the show and talk to him for a little bit. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
All right, I think that's where I'll leave, actually. For me personally, I don't desire to do dev interviews. As far as reacts go, I don't think that they really add much to the game or whatever. I'm really only concerned about the game. That was very game focused. This is already an hour long, and that's plenty. I'm sure it's a great interview. Forrest is super cool. CitizenCon, he was hilarious. The CitizenCon I went to, and I'll leave it at that. I'll keep that story to maybe if you guys meet me in person, you ask me about the Forrest Steffen story at CitizenCon 2016, and I'll tell you in person. But I don't want it out there because I don't know if he wants it out there on stream or whatever. But it's hilarious. And yeah, I think that's where I'll leave it. I don't think we got a whole lot answered, except for these are big bunkers for now with somewhat unique gameplay. Obviously, the moving cargo from within is very unique to these locations, but we got a little bit of an idea of what the intended design is for them long term, and I think that that's okay. But like a lot of things, it doesn't really feel that way, so we'll see. So yeah, I've been streaming for 7.5 hours. I think it's time I end. What do you guys say? We'll check you later, everybody, okay? Thank you for watching. I appreciate it.